Ladies and gentlemen, we are live and we're just a few minutes late because Casey Avorti and I were just having a chat. So welcome, Casey, to the show. I am so excited to have you as part of the summit. You have interviewed me. You are a podcaster. You are a positive parenting coach, and you have been for, I believe it's over 10 years now, correct?
Yes, now that we're in 2018, I can say over 10 years.
Over 10 years. And she has a fantastic podcast called Joyful Courage that she's interviewed me on. And I'm a little behind on the shows we were just talking about. Welcome to the summit, Casey.
Oh, Maria, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be on the other side with you and having you interview me. So thanks for the opportunity.
You're welcome. So tell us a little bit before we dive into your talk today. Tell us a little bit about how you support parents on a day-to-day basis in your business.
Yeah, well, you mentioned I'm a positive discipline trainer. I do live and online classes. I work one-on-one with parents and do individual coaching. And I have different offers parents aren't always sure how they want to dive in. Sometimes coaching is this big investment. I also have a membership that's kind of a big investment. So I've also been creating smaller offers so that parents can dip their toes into what I do. And really, I think about it as, on one hand, I have this whole positive discipline background. So I've got amazing strategies and this foundation, philosophical foundation around being in relationship with our kids, and creating routines and agreements and using language and listening skills to just continue to develop that relationship. And that's really where our influence lies. And the other piece of what I offer is really recognizing as parents, and this is what Joyful Courage is really what means to me, is really being open and rejoicing, which I laugh when I say rejoicing, celebrating, right? The fact that the parenting journey is just one long personal growth and development workshop. So there's those
Hallelujah to that.
Right. And it's one that we don't really get to choose, like, oh, I want to do that. I want to go to that workshop or not. It's there. It's happening. It's available. And when we say yes to that, when we recognize, okay, there's stuff for me to work on here. Like, my children are showing me and we're going to talk more about this, where I could learn and grow. When we accept that as part of our parenting journey, I think it makes all of those tools and strategies ever more available to us. So I also work with parents around that, their own personal growth and development through parenting.
Super. Very good. And if you like what you're hearing right now, I definitely recommend your podcast, because we have a family mission statement, a value statement, and we also have a family motto thanks to your podcast.
Yay, cool.
Yeah, it was you and another friend who's also a positive parenting trainer who were talking and explaining the whole family meeting, and we do family meetings, and that was really transformational for us. And actually, the other day, my 4-year-old, I said, oh, you're going to have your grandma babysitting. You have a meeting to go to. And he said, a family meeting? No, there are other meetings. So, so I've learned a lot from your podcast. Thank you. But let's dive in. People are tuning in and they want to know, what is minding the gap? Tell us what you're talking about today.
Well, when I talk about minding the gap, and I swiped that phrase, the first time I heard that phrase was in reading Brené Brown's work. I love Brené Brown. Anybody who's watching, if you haven't started getting into Brené Brown, I highly recommend her work.
I should tell you, I invited her to the summit, and I actually got a response back that they were going to take it to the meeting to introduce it to her, and she was out of town during the summit. Yeah.
I have sent her many an email.
So Brené Brown,
very busy.
She's very busy. But let's talk. First, I need to interject. You are a mother of 2 teenagers, so I think that's important for people to know.
Yeah, I am. Well, my daughter just Friday turned 15, and my son is 12, so we're right on the cusp with him.
Okay.
Yeah. So I am in it, people. I'm in
She's
it.
in it. Okay. So go back to Brene Brown.
Yeah. So, well, I don't really have a lot to say about Brene Brown, except for that I love her. And she talks about minding the gap. For me, what minding the gap means is, again, recognizing that there's space, right? Recognizing that there's space between an event or experience, right? And our response to it. So many people have come to me and said, I love your classes. I learned so much from you. But when I'm in it with my kids, I can't stop myself from getting super mad or yelling or whatever the fallback. I like to call it the train, the crazy train, the emotional freight train. We get picked up by it, and then it's taking us down the tracks, and
So
we're
the
just
gap,
like, blah, blah, blah.
So the gap is here. So my child, did something wrong, made a bad choice. Here's the space, and here's me reacting.
Right. And a lot of us feel like there is no space.
It's like
it's instant.
Reaction.
Body fills, and I'm actually currently writing a book all about this. But with intention and with attention, with practice, we can develop a space between event and experience, with whether it's with our kids or another driver or our partner or whoever. We can learn to develop a space between event and experience and how we respond, because we want to be in the response. We don't want to be in reaction, because reaction is that physical experience that we have. For me, it's heat, tension, so uncomfortable. I'm mad. I feel dismissed. I feel disrespected. How could they? Everything comes up, and then out of my mouth
is the reaction,
which tends to be hurtful,
negative,
not helpful, not forwarding. And then, if we're really working to be in relationship with our kids, that kind of reaction also hurts relationship. Now, sometimes it's not about perfection. Sometimes we have these experiences, even when we're on the path of connected, intentional parenting, even when we're on the path of joyful courage, we react and sometimes it's like, well, okay, that was not helpful. And now I get to model what it looks like to make amends. So all is not lost. And this is about progress, not perfection. So what I've been really playing with around the gap is thinking about and recognizing that part of the reason we go into reaction is because what is happening for us physically and emotionally is so uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. It's so uncomfortable to be with. So we move right into action. We bypass okay, what's happening for me right now? And we move right into action, which is that reaction, right? And so the first step that I would invite parents, so I've got 3 steps to mind the gap, right?
Okay.
And the first step is finding your breath, right? Finding your breath in the moment. Like, where's my breath? Your breath is always present. We are not always present to our breath, but this is one entry point, right, towards minding this gap, is simply finding our breath. Because when we bring attention to our breath, when we feel it entering our body, when we follow it into our body, when we can feel the breath coming out through our nostrils, when we start to pay attention to those details, what happens is we begin the process of calming our nervous system.
And this is called self-regulation strategies. I'm trying to teach my children, and my new children's book incorporates regulation strategies.
You and me, girl. And it's not, I didn't invent it, right?
No.
The breath.
Yeah. It's
but
the breath.
Because in those moments, right? In those moments of overwhelm, I don't know if you've ever had this experience, Maria, but when we try to start with the head and say, okay, I'm freaking out right now, I need to calm down, we then engage in a conversation with ourselves that might sound like, no, screw that. I'm mad right now.
Yeah.
I don't want to calm down. They need to know, right?
I have a right to be mad. Mm-hmm.
Right. And so it's this whole inner blah, blah, blah that's happening. So this is an alternative way, right, of of finding presence in the moment. So using the breath, right? The breath is also the entry point into getting into our bodies. So often if you start paying attention to your triggered times, you'll notice that you have your own special experience that happens in posture in your body. For me and a lot of people, shoulders go up, tension in the chest, right? We almost literally go into fighter stance.
And that's a body alarm. Like your body's telling you something's wrong.
Right. Your body's like fight or flight. Your body goes into protection mode, right? As if your child is a bear entering the cave instead
Which
of
is sometimes feel like they are.
Right. But this is so hardwired, this fight or flight, since like in human evolution, it was one of like, that's the part of the brain that was first developed in the womb. It's been around. It's this ancient part of our brain. And so now we don't have to like worry about bears in the cave, but we're still getting triggered the same way. So we take the breath into the body, recognizing, so now we're in the body. So this is number 2, like recognizing what's happening, where our shoulders are, and pulling back, like finding peace in the body by changing our posture, pulling back our shoulders, opening our heart, feeling our feet on the floor, right? And all this time, Maria, we are still in this uncomfortable place, right? Okay. So it's not necessarily like how to push all of that out, but really I'm offering parents a tool here to be with it, right? Be with it. And once we can use the body or use the breath to get into the body, shift our posture a little bit. And then from this place, we're going to be more able to take what I call a balcony seat, which literally means bigger perspective around what's happening, right? Like my child is not on a mission to send me to the mental ward, right? Like this is not about me, which by the way, I think is the toughest part about parenting is really recognizing that this is not about you.
Oh, Casey, we just had an interview a couple hours ago with Anna Seawald. She's a child psychologist, and she said the same thing. She said, it's not about you. Use empathy on that step number 3. Like, look at your child and put yourself in a different place. That balcony seat, I love it. Take it from a bigger perspective. Yeah. Are they out to get you right now? No, there's something going on within them.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, all of you that are watching that have young kids, the more you practice this, the younger they are, it is so useful by the time they hit 15, because that tendency to want to make it about you is strong. It's strong, and you're not failing just because you find yourself there. It's just that human instinct, right? And so, so breath, body, balcony is really about how to grow that pause, how to grow the space between event and experience and your response.
Fantastic. I wrote it down. I'm taking notes. That's so helpful. The 3 Bs, breath, body, and balcony. So this is really focusing inward, what you were talking about. And you were talking about really bringing awareness to who do you want to be as a parent? Can you talk to that?